Tender as roses, I come from women, strong as stone, and I come from women who taught me no one ever fights alone. Women of wisdom, women of tears, women who stood and embraced their fears, women of struggle, women not free, women who passed the torch to me. Now joining hands, we will be free. I come from women. I come from women.
90.1 FM, KKFI, Kansas City Community Radio. Streaming online at www.kkfi.org.
The views and opinions of this program are those of its host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 90.1 FM, KKFI, Midcoast Radio Project, or its staff and volunteers.
My story, sad story now. Still waiting for the truth to be told now. Whoa, whoa, whoa. It won't be long now. Won't be long. Heard the news, heard your rivers all run dry. And on TV, I see missiles in your sky. Word is out, loud whispering going on. Oh, angels turn mercenaries coming in thousands strong. Oh, Bengaluru, motherland, yeah. Oh, Bengaluru, black and white sand. Oh, Bengaluru, motherland. Whoa, Bengaluru, black and white sand. Motherland, I know you love your family, yeah. Break the chains and set yourself free, yeah. Sound the drums, bring the children to the fold. A grand reunion, the war is getting cold. Oh, Bengaluru, motherland, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, Bengaluru, black and white sand. Oh, Bengaluru, motherland. Whoa, Bengaluru, black and white sand. My story, sad story now. Still waiting for the truth. Your story.
You're tuned to 90.1 FM, KKFI, Kansas City Community Radio. This is Urban Connections. I'm your host, Donna Wolfe. Our guest in studio today is Brian Foster, the president of the 100 Black Men of Greater Kansas City organization. They are real men giving real time. Welcome for the first time, Brian, to Urban Connections.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here.
Wonderful to have you with us here today. I want to start out by reminding our listeners that it is our winter 2014 pledge drive here at 90.1 FM KKFI. I want to remind you that this is your community radio station that's been broadcasting 100,000 watts of pure people power, news, information, music, views, perspectives that you, quite frankly, aren't going to get anyplace else on your radio dial, locally and nationally, pretty much as well. We've been doing this for 25 years plus with your support, direct contributions from our listeners who appreciate this venue for free speech and news and information and music. We invite you to give generously if you believe in your community, if you believe in local news and information, if you believe in programming that's not influenced by some, outside corporatocracy that gives us a playlist, that gives us a script, that does all of these things that you find on most commercial mainstream outlets. If you like it real and you like it raw, give us a call here at KKFI and support local community radio, a rare and precious gem. I'm going to give you the number to call. There's volunteers standing by to help you out with your donation. And the number to call is 888-931-0901. That's 888-931-0901. You can also pledge online securely at our website, www.kkfi.org. That's kkfi.org. This session at the $90 level, you can receive as a thank you from us the official KKFI Collectors T-shirt that proclaims what's local, vocal, and heard all over. And on the back, the answer, 90.1 FM, KKFI Community Radio, kkfi.org, or for the low, low price, a low donation for some, maybe a stretch for others, but if you can, there's the $150 guest DJ certificate, which gives you the opportunity to be a programmer, a DJ here on your favorite music program, like maybe Roots-wise Reggae Saturday evenings with Rock and Donna. Maybe you get a guest DJ slot for that at the $150 level. Again, the number to call is 888-931-0901. I see MC Richardson, Judy Ansel. I see Mike Murphy in there, ready and waiting to answer your call. 888-931-0901 or online securely at kkfi.org. Thank you so much, listeners, for your support. And thank you once again, Brian, for being our guest here on Urban Connections and coming here to tell us about this organization, 100 Black Men of Greater Kansas City. Please describe to our listeners what your mission is and what it's all about.
Well, much of what we do is similar to what this station does. We're stewards of the community, specifically targeting young African-American males. We currently have 35 members. I wanted to mention that because the first question invariably that I always get is, do you have 100 black men in the organization?
Yeah.
We are part of a national organization with over 100 chapters worldwide. So technically you could say, yes, we have over 100 members. But in our chapter, which is rather nascent, we've been in Kansas City since 2006.
Okay.
Right now we have 35 members. We've had as many as 52. We've had as little as 27. So it kind of fluctuates depending on members' availability. We are a 100% volunteer service organization. We have many different programs geared towards young men, and we also have events and activities that we do that services the greater community. So that's pretty much, in general, my spiel on that.
Well, so how do you qualify to be one of the 100 black men of Greater Kansas City? What type of men make up that group?
Well, we're primarily a group of African-American professional men. Our requirements are fairly minimal. You have to be at least 21 years old, able to pass a background check because we do work with youth, serve a certain amount of hours. We have a minimum of 16 volunteer service hours that we ask of all of our members, and pretty much that's the baseline for membership qualifications. The primary thing that we ask is what you said at the top of your introduction. We're real men given real time. That is the primary value that we add.
And in what ways do you give your time?
We volunteer on several different programs. Our primary one being our 100 Pursuit of Purpose, which is a mentoring initiative that we do on Saturday afternoons primarily twice a month that provides workshops, seminars on life skills, things that are encouraging or a supplement to their educational or academic pursuits, health and wellness initiatives. We are very heavy into nutrition and fitness, and of course, economic empowerment, being able to balance a checkbook, learning how to pay bills, how bills are paid, things of that nature. Very rudimentary skills that many of us take for granted who already know. Some of these young men don't have any avenue to learn that, and that's a part of what we provide. We also provide experiences for the young men with different excursions. Just last year, they were able to go to the Chiefs game. We went to a soccer game with the Sporting KC. We took them to the inaugural Missouri Classic featuring Grambling and Lincoln at Arrowhead Stadium. And some of the young men can qualify to go to our national convention of all of the chapters of the 100 Black Men. Last year was in New Orleans.
And how many young men in the area do you serve?
That varies. In the mentoring program specifically, it ranges anywhere from 15 to 25 young men. Remember, these are young men who also have lives themselves, are playing football and basketball and what have you. So that number varies, and sometimes they bring friends to different things, especially the fun stuff. But the mentoring program are not the only youth that we touch. We also work with the Kansas City, Missouri School District, specifically King Weeks Elementary, where we've staged a reading comprehension program for 6th grade boys. We served 27 in the last semester, and then we're just getting ready to kick off the one for this semester next week. The snow kind of put us back a little bit. And then we also partner with other groups such as 2020 Leadership, where we've hosted a gentleman's roundtable for the last 2 years, where we invite members who have graduated both from our program and from 2020 Leadership program who are in college to come back and probably provide the young men who are still in high school their first reality check regarding what life is like on a college campus.
Okay. Now, you are the president of the organization.
Yes.
Talk about, when you saw the need for this type of program, 100 Black Men of Greater Kansas City. What personally drew you to it? What was...
Excellent question. One I don't get often enough, but I'm happy to talk about my particular passion. We have 4 pillars that the 100 Black Men as a organization worldwide supports: mentoring, education, health and wellness, economic empowerment. My particular passion is in the education aspect, but obviously I support all 4, not just as the president, but also as a member prior to my accepting this post. Back in 2006, when the founders were looking for candidates to join them in chartering this chapter, they were recruiting from other organizations. I belong to a fraternity, Kappa Alpha Psi. I'm happy to give them a shout out. Yes, ma'am. I work with youth at my church, St. Andrew Christian Church out in Olathe. I've mentored young men in my own family, nephews and what have you, throughout my life. But I really didn't have an avenue to work with African American males, particularly within the urban core, who probably have the greatest need for mentors. And this organization's mission spoke to me in a way that my associations with all the other groups that I work with have not. And that's what drew me to the organization.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we will continue our conversation with Brian Foster, who's the president of the 100 Black Men of Greater Kansas City, an organization that is a international network whose mission, in part, is to, basically improve the lives of young black men in urban areas.
Yes, ma'am.
In our country. Okay. Thanks so much. Please stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back after this message.
Support for KKFI provided by the Sterling Dance Theater production of The Underground, an American Story at the Kaufman Center for the Performing Arts on February 7th and 8th at 7:30 p.m. Combining ballet, modern and physical dance with theater and storytelling, The Underground, an American Story celebrates Black History Month with this moving tale of the Underground Railroad. Tickets and details at kaufmancenter.org.
90.1 FM, KKFI, Kansas City Community Radio. This is Urban Connections. I'm your host, Donna Wolfe. Our guest in studio today is Mr. Brian Foster, who's the president of the local branch of 100 Black Men. It's 100 Black Men of Greater Kansas City. Tell us about some of the kids that you've worked with, some of their stories, and how they come to the organization.
Certainly. I would say that a lot of the young men who find themselves in our program find us through a parent or a family friend who are looking for assistance in either providing that male presence, or perhaps the young man has been living a wayward life up until that point and just needs some assistance being directed to the right path towards specifically completing high school. I mean, the high school graduation rates, particularly among African Americans, is pretty appalling. Mm-hmm. Although we've seen some improvement over the past couple of years, still we're disproportionately represented on graduation day amongst all of the different demographics. So most of them find us through that. Either they have an association with a specific member, they find us on the website. Sometimes the family has moved from another area where there was a 100 Black Men chapter, and they want their young men to be a part of that. And again, we do have relationships with other organizations, specifically the Urban League. We work with the Urban League. We work with 2020 Leadership, as I've said. All of us belong to pretty much all the fraternities. We have relationships with other African Americans, professional people around the city. So there's a lot of different avenues. Our primary avenue is our website, of course, 100blackmenkc.org.
Okay. You have a reading comprehension program and a read aloud
yes.
program inside the schools.
That's correct.
How do these kids receive you? Because, you know, I think the generally accepted perception of black male urban youth is that they're tough and they're angry and they, have an attitude that is off-putting. They're stereotyped as not being thirsty to learn or not being, engaged academically. How do you find the youth that you engage with?
Well, first of all, let me just say that the reaction that we get in the schools when we first walked in, you have to understand many of our schools, just in general, are not populated with males, and certainly not African American males, with the exception of administration and staff, mm-hmm. Perhaps a custodian, perhaps a gym teacher. So when they see someone coming in to their school that does not work there, they're either police officer or some sort of law enforcement, or someone trying to sell something. Mm-hmm. It's a hard concept for a lot of our urban youth to believe that there are people who take time out of their busy schedule to come and help them without any gain for them. So the first thing we have to do is gain some level of connection that, hey, we're here for you. Some of us have similar experiences growing up that some of these young people are living in. They can connect on that level. I'm not one of those people. So I have to find other ways to connect with them by just letting them know, look, I'm going to be here. Yes, I could be somewhere else making money. I could be somewhere else, with my own family. But I feel that this is important enough to place you or give you an opportunity to place yourself in a position to take my place someday. I'm not going to live forever. And I want to leave something that was given to me on my way up. Not that I'm, reached the heights or anything, but I certainly live a very comfortable life, and it was because a lot of people helped me on my journey. So once we gain the level of confidence, then we have to let them know that it's okay to achieve. As you know, as you were alluding to, there's a lot of attitude and, I got to be hard, and there's no street credibility for whatever reason for academic excellence. We try to show them that there is a means to an end for performing well in school. This, if nothing else, is a demonstration to a prospective employer that I'm going to complete the task that you give me. I'm going to do well. I'm going to represent your company well by representing yourself in school. So a lot of what the reading program and the read aloud and the essay contest and the things that we've done in the school systems have simply been to instill confidence that you can achieve it, and then to provide them some exposure to the rewards of doing it.
You alluded to the essay contest. You had a Martin Luther King Jr. essay luncheon.
Yes.
Recognizing students. There were 70-plus students who submitted an essay on the life of civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King and talked about his significance in our society today. Now, are kids into Dr. Martin Luther King? What were the essays like?
Well, we first of all, I should, in all fairness, say we did not do one in 2013 or 2014.
Okay.
But yes, I think part of it was the attractiveness of a contest where their work was going to be on display, and they were going to be able to have some creative input that would be recognized. And that was the primary purpose of that. But yes, once they got into it, there were some very introspective commentary on the kids themselves on how the King legacy and the legacy of the civil rights movement at large are impacting them today. In 2012, I think is the last time we did that.
You did that. So Brian, talk about what is the formula for success that so many youth are missing out on today. You yourself said you did not have the experience of the urban core, but what was the formula that you think allowed you to be successful?
Well, it wasn't a hard scrabble life, that's for sure, although my mother and father did everything they could to replicate that in the house. We didn't get everything we wanted, that's for sure. But I think it's three areas that points to success. If you're able to master responsibility, discipline, and humility. The first two are pretty easy to teach. I define responsibility as doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. Mm-hmm. Discipline is doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it, even if you don't feel like it. Mm-hmm. And humility, which is the hardest thing to teach, but you can provide an opportunity for them to practice humility, is you get what you want last. Being deferential. That's a hard concept for most human beings to get their heads around, particularly those who have achieved great things, wealth, status, fame, what have you. Some people get to the point where I'm bulletproof. They don't have to be humble, which is, as we know, not the case. So when you're dealing with a teenage young man full of hormones who does not necessarily see themselves climbing out of their existing situation, and there's no role model within their immediate community to point to, that's a difficult concept for them to understand. And then when you add responsibility and discipline on it, it's, well, why? Why should I go to school? Why should I do my homework? Why should I tuck my shirt in? Nobody else is doing it. It's a very difficult thing, but that's part of our pursuit of purpose messaging, is being responsible, being disciplined, being respectful. Respect yourself. Like what you see in the mirror. If you don't like yourself, no one else is. Those are the types of lessons and messages that we give.
So can you talk about the difference between teaching humility and humiliating a child? Because I think sometimes parents don't know the difference between teaching a kid humility and humiliating a child.
Yes, that is. There is a tangential relationship between the two words, but there is a marked difference between what you do to get that lesson across. I think the primary difference is your purpose, your motivation, your reasoning for doing what you're doing. If you're trying to teach humility because you're tired of the way they're doing it and you're exhausted and you don't want to put forth the mental effort to redirect the child's behavior or redirect the child's performance, then you're going to fall back on the easy things with insults, perhaps passive-aggressive commentary, and we all fall into that at times.
Give an example, if you would, of passive-aggressive commentary from a parent.
Well, let's say that your child's not doing so well in school. Says, well, you're not really that smart anyway. So I guess if you want to fail, go ahead and fail. I don't care. I already got mine. You ain't gonna live here when you're 21. So. But
that's devastating.
But it's such an easy thing to do, particularly with the trials and tribulations of just keeping the roof over your head, food on the table, clothes on the back. Particularly for folks who are at or below the poverty line. And President Obama was just talking about that in his State of the Union address. No one should have to work as hard as they work to be poor. That's a ridiculous concept in one of the richest countries on the planet, but it is a reality. So a lot of parents and mentors too reach for the expedient solution. We try to not necessarily counter that because we can't take the place of the parent, but what we can do is we can be a sounding board for that young man who may be experiencing that, not just from the parent, but also from the teachers at school and every other touch point of influence in that child's life, to sometimes just be a sounding board. Some of the young men that I have worked with personally, sometimes they just want an ear. And I also think a key to going from humility to humiliating, or to stay away from humiliating the child, is let them ask the question, let them drive the conversation, let them drive the teaching moment, rather than you just continuously pounding the lesson. Even though it might be well-meaning, the child might view it as you're constantly, lecturing me, I'm failing.
It's nagging, yeah. Nagging. You speak like an educator. Is that your profession?
Not specifically. I grew up with two, and I used to be a trainer at work. I work for Sprint. I've been there for 20 years now, and I spent 5 years in the University of Excellence, which is now Sprint University, teaching adults. And adult learning theory is a little different than teaching in the school system. But I worked in the school system so many years, not just with the 100, but before then I was doing I can't remember the name of it, not junior achievement. Okay. So I've worked in the school system for many years, and having a mother who has worked at every job in education, from teacher to principal to counselor, it's been pounded in my head for many years on the approach.
Okay. Well, I did not grow up with a parent who was a teacher, but I always thought that was an interesting and maybe stressful position to be in.
Oh, man, she may be listening, so I'm going to hold my comment.
Okay. Well, why don't we take a break and we come
Love you,
back.
Mom.
We come back, we'll continue our conversation here on Urban Connections with Brian Foster, who's president of the organization called 100 Black Men of Greater Kansas City. You're tuned to 90.1 FM, KKFI. Again, in the middle of our winter 2014 pledge drive, we urge you to continue your support for community radio here at 90.1 FM. 100,000 watts of people power, a rare and precious gem. There aren't that many 100,000 watt community radio stations in the country. We may be one of like 2. It just doesn't happen like that. So the value of this is just astronomical, and I love the way that Kansas City's community has embraced KKFI and made it a reality for this past quarter century. It's an amazing thing. So continue your good work, Kansas City, supporting community radio locally at 90.1 FM. Give us a call right now. Sharon Lockhart is there to answer the phone, 888-931-0901, 888-931-0901. Get Amy busy in there and get Mike Murphy busy answering your calls. Or go online at kkfi.org. We'll be back. Stay with us.
Hello, this is Groovy Grant asking you to support KKFI, your community radio station where you hear radio like you never heard it before. KKFI is a shared resource where you'll hear many different opinions and perspectives. You may not agree with them all, but it's important that everyone has the opportunity to be heard at least some of the time. And the diversity of programs you hear on KKFI gives you the opportunity to consider all perspectives so that your own opinions will be more fully informed. If you want entertainment and information that you can't get anywhere else, if you share KKFI's mission, then call 888-931-0901 and make your pledge today. That's 888-931-0901. Or if you prefer, go online to kkfi.org and make your pledge. Call now at 888-931-0901.
Can you believe that it's true? They're killing the youth, taking away our future. Words that fall down, and we gotta pray, meditate, find a way, save the children. We gotta pray, meditate, find a way, save the children. Tomorrow will fade away, erase if we don't save the children. But they can't care. Save the babies, save your babies, save your babies. Hey, them coming to get you, no matter.
90.1 FM, KKFI, Kansas City Community Radio. This is Urban Connections. I'm your host, Donna Wolfe, joined in studio today by President of 100 Black Men of Greater Kansas City, Brian Foster. We talked about some of the methods that you personally employ in trying to reach and engage with young black men in the urban core. You know, and I wanted to ask you also, is there still Junior Achievement? Does that organization still exist?
I believe it does still exist. I haven't had any relationships with them in several years, but I do believe it still exists.
It seems like we're losing so many programs that used to be kind of fundamental in the schools that were designed and successful at engaging kids and sort of giving them some life etiquette, life skills it's just, I think we're feeling the results of losing some of that type of programming in the schools.
I agree. Funding has always been an issue. It remains an issue, particularly in the Kansas City, Missouri School District is one of the reasons why we wanted to partner with them. Mm-hmm. We used to, or we still authenticate our member volunteers through Youth Friends, but they have suffered many reverses from a financial perspective over the last few years. So it's just a reality of what we're dealing with today.
Okay. Now, since you have already dialed and made your pledge at 888-931-0901, or if you haven't, I'm still encouraging you to do that. Pledge now at 888-931-0901. And after you do that, if you have a question for our guest, Brian Foster, you can give us a call in studio. And that number is 816-931-5534, 816-931-KKFI. What about training for mentors, Brian? How do you make somebody an effective mentor? I mean, it could be somebody who's professional. Maybe they're an engineer. Maybe they're a doctor. Maybe they're an accountant or firefighter or some other, sexy profession like that. How do you make them a good mentor?
First, let me say that some of the professions you just mentioned comprise our membership. We have members from all walks of life, all levels of professions. We have millionaires and we have wage earners. We'll take whoever is willing to give their time. But with regard to training, our national office, 100 Black Men of America, they're headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, last year instituted a national mentoring training program. So any member in good standing can log into the members-only website, and there are 5 different training modules on mentoring and different levels of engagement, from the one-on-one mentoring to group mentoring to activities to safety issues, all different aspects of mentoring that you can possibly think of, that provides some continuity across all of the chapters on how to approach mentoring. Now, with that said, every chapter is charged with having a mentoring program. How they employ that is up to that individual chapter. We have a twice Saturday group mentoring program. The one-on-one mentoring is sort of organic from that group mentoring activity, although we do have members on the mentoring committee who are responsible for keeping in touch with a specific mentee throughout the year. But as you know, some mentees will gravitate towards one of our members because of the relationship that they forged over those activities that we work with, or they may have a specific interest in a mentor's profession or experience or whatever the case may be. So we start there with that foundation of training. Then we simply give them a primer on what our approach is with regard to engaging the youth within the Kansas City metro area. And between those two, they get whatever skill sets they need to engage our young men. Now, let me say this. Not everyone is cut out to be a mentor per se, as far as having that daily or weekly contact with young people, either because of the comfort level or they don't have the time to be able to commit, and then they support the 100 in other ways. They issue press releases, they come on radio shows, or whatever the case may be. Yeah. But everyone who is a member of our chapter is a mentor. And by definition, if you're a mentor, you must be a leader, because that's what you're doing, is you're providing some leadership for someone who needs it. And we also mentor each other. Probably not as much as we should, because our main focus is on the young people, but there are people within our membership who I would consider my mentor as far as how I govern, how I engage with the public, how I engage with the young people. Some folks have more experience fathering than I do. We all have kids, or many of us have kids. So we extend mentoring to a lot of different areas. Our primary focus is youth, but that's not all we serve.
Have you ever lost any of your kids? Have you lost any of your mentees?
Yes, ma'am.
To violence?
Yes, unfortunately, that is a reality that we have to live with. Back in 2006, when we first started, we began doing one-on-one mentoring. We partnered with Operation Breakthrough, who reached out to us. One of our members was on the board of Operation Breakthrough and said, look, we're losing junior high kids. They come up through our program, and then when they reach junior high and beginning to look at high school, the street is more attractive to them than Operation Breakthrough, even though they have nice team stuff there. So they engaged us to come and work in their facility with their young people. So each of us was assigned a young man, and I was assigned a young man named DeAnthony. DeAnthony and I met at least twice a month. We talked on the phone once a week. His favorite place to eat was Winstead's, so we'd go there. He loved chess, so we play chess. And I use chess as a metaphor for life, you know how to, planning your moves several steps ahead, not to act emotionally, use logic in reasoning, and, things of that nature as we're playing. And his favorite topic was, of course, girls. So we spent a lot of time talking about girls. And that went on for a couple of years. Then he kind of stopped coming. His grandmother would call me. He'd give me updates on it, but he wouldn't call. So after a while, we decided that if he's not going to engage, we'll focus on the young men that are here, since I was available to do that, and I would just count on his grandmother to keep me posted. Well, in 2011, he was a victim of a drive-by. He wasn't even the target. He was at a birthday party for his cousin, and someone just came by and just opened up, and he was murdered. And I actually wrote about it on the website on the President's page, and it was extremely impactful. I can't really put it into words, but it just crystallized my reason for being here. It's not for the publicity. It's not for self-aggrandizement. I'm here to help another young man or a group of young men avoid that reality and, as I said earlier, to take my place. Anybody can achieve what I've achieved, what the other members have achieved. It just takes a little bit of preparation, a little bit of elbow grease, maybe a little luck and blessing along the way. But anybody can achieve this. And what we're doing is we're providing a glimpse into a potential future.
So talk about the safety issues in mentoring. What do you have to do as far as safety is concerned?
Well, specifically to our behavior, I would say that, we're not supposed to drink or smoke or use bad language around the young men, just, normal common sense things. But what they train us in the training is about potential conflict between you and the youth.
Interesting.
And more importantly, you and the parent of the youth.
Wow. I never even considered that.
And it's something that you wouldn't think about. The parents are coming to you for help, but let's say you gain the young man's confidence, and he starts confiding in you things that he doesn't tell anybody else, and then the mom is pressuring you to find out what the young man has said.
You almost got to have like a doctor-patient relationship, I would think. Pretty
much, unless there's a court order. And that can... there have been instances where that situation has escalated into a potential problem. So the national organization, try to capture some skill sets to try to avoid that. First and foremost, be open. Be as transparent as you can possibly be with not only the relationship as it exists, but what you will and will not do up front. The parent has to be involved as a part of this mentoring activity. You can't do it in a vacuum because they have to support it, obviously, by transportation at the younger ages and just making sure that the kid stays engaged, like what happened with me and DeAnthony. The grandmother was the one that was driving his participation until he got to an age where he decided that that's not what he was going to do.
Interesting. Well, we've got a caller on the line. Caller, are you there?
Yeah, good afternoon. Brother Ron here.
Brother Ron, you're on the air at 90.1 FM. What part of town are you calling us from?
Calling in from South Kansas City.
Yes, and South Kansas City. And your comment for our guest, Brian Foster.
Yes.
Question.
I want to ask him a question.
Go ahead.
In relation to his organization. Been doing some research trying to get several organizations to work together to try to get our young black men 18 to 34 signed up on the health care plan that the government is putting forth now. I'd like to know your organization, nationally and locally, would they be able to help us work with that? Because we want to put together a coalition of organizations. Because when we look at black men dying, especially in Kansas City, over 60-something% were uninsured. And in the long run, if we begin to make sure our young men are insured, we'd be at a much more advantaged position. Does your organization look at something like that when you advise and counsel families?
Thank you, first of all, for the question, Brother Ron. I will say specific to this issue, we have not had a substantive conversation about actions. We've certainly had conversations about the advent of the Affordable Care Act and what that means to the greater community, not just in Kansas City, but across the country, and how we as a local chapter can be impactful in at least getting the word out and helping people find resources to get assistance in signing up for coverage. I don't know if there is a national initiative with this specifically in mind, but there certainly should be, and I have no problem advocating that for you. If on a small level, I'll help market that through our channels.
Okay, sort of run it through your group and see what their feeling is on it, because I will be talking to several organizations. Hopefully, we could get a couple of national, because if you look at all the black males who die across this country every year, and then you look at the fact that 50% of them are not even insured, it's just a double loss. Even if we could get 20% of them insured, I think it would make a significant difference in our future, because the families already suffer a great deal when they die, and when there's no insurance, and we're the ones who die. And so I see this as an opportunity, and I will be contacting you. So thank you, and thank you for your great work, brother. Anybody who works with our young men, I have to give them their kudos, and thank you, brother. God bless you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Brother Ron. 816-931-5534, 816-931-KKFI. If you have a question or a comment for our guest, Brian Foster, president of 100 Black Men of Greater Kansas City. And their website is 100blackmenkc.org, 100blackmenkc.org. I was wondering, Brian, if there's any comparable organization for young black women. Is there 100 Black Women of Kansas City?
There is a 100 Black Women organization, not here in Kansas City. However, one of the organizations that we've been partnering with over the last couple of years is called Rubies Incorporated. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's RUBIES, and there's dots after each one of those letters, incorporated.org. What they do is to young women what we do with young men. And one of the things that Chantel Garrett, who is the CEO of that organization, and I have had some substantive conversations about it, and this year we're going to actually put those into action, is to provide a forum for their young women and our young men to get together to have a conversation.
I like that idea.
Primarily to do two things. One, to put into practice some of the life lessons and skill sets with regard to communication and decorum and what have you that we've already taught. But as you know, the dynamic when the women and the men are together changes differently. There's one attitude when it's just guys talking. Man, when I'm with the women, they love me. And so here's your opportunity. So we'd like an opportunity to provide, some engagements for them to talk about issues related to male-female relationships, because as you know, there's a problem there in that area too.
Absolutely. We've got another caller on the line. Caller, are you there?
Yes.
You're on the air at 90.1 FM. Please tell us your name and what part of town you're calling from.
My name is Lisa, and I'm calling from north of the river, Kansas City.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for calling. You got a question or comment for our guest, Brian Foster?
Yeah, I do. I came in on the conversation, so I don't know if he already talked about this or not, but I wanted to know, is there some follow-up after the kids graduate from high school? Because I had a son, well, I have a son that's a young adult now, and he was involved not in his organization, but something else similar in high school, but like right after high school, he kind of slipped through the cracks. So I wondered if there's some follow-up, if they follow him on through college, or if they don't go to college, do they follow up in mentoring with these young men? Because, you know, not only my one son, but I see a lot of young guys out here that are, you know, late teens, early 20s that are, you know, need some guidance.
Okay, thanks, Lisa.
Yes, thank you. Good question. And from a programmatic standpoint, we have no structure in place for working with young men after high school. But we do, with that said, we do continue to engage with all of the young men who graduate from our program. Once they graduate from high school, obviously one of our main goals is to get them directed towards some sort of continuous education, whether that be college, junior college, trade school, what have you. We want them to continue their academic pursuits. That's part of our messaging. So as they do that, we certainly continue our relationship with them that we forge throughout their time in the mentoring program, which the age range is from 12 to 18. So we get them from junior high or middle school all the way to high school. One of the ways for us to continue to engage with those young men from a global, you know, from a structural perspective is what we've been doing with the Gentlemen's Roundtable for the last 2 years. So not only do we continue to keep in touch with them and provide whatever mentoring guidance that we can continue to do, but we also want to tap into their experiences to reach back with the young men who are still in our programs, because we found that their commentary resonates much more than ours. They certainly want to know about our experience, but, you know, I went to Clark College in Atlanta in the 80s. There's not a whole lot of resonance from my experience in the 80s, which was much different from college experience today, even though there's some similarities. But these young men today, when they get out of high school and they continue their education, they can come back and say, look, I'm in it now. Here's what you can expect. Here's what I wish I would have done when I was still in high school to help prepare me for this transition. That's been a great boon to our reach.
Okay, so that answer your question, Lisa?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you for calling 816-931-5534, 816-931-KKFI. If you have a question or a comment for our guest in studio, Brian Foster. He's the president of 100 Black Men of Greater Kansas City. That's 100blackmenkc.org. I have a question about young black men who are transitioning to college. Number one, there seems to be a pretty high attrition rate, and not necessarily young black men from the urban core. But how do you reach young black men who aren't in the urban core, who are probably suffering from some stereotypes and that kind of thing in suburban schools? Do you have outreach to young black men in suburban schools? Those numbers are growing.
Yes, and we have suburban kids that have come through our program. Most of our touch points for the suburban area kids have been through our partnerships with Jack and Jill of Olin Park. All of those young men that are in their annual Botillion, which last year we conducted one of the mentoring sessions for them. All of those young men are quite accomplished, very articulate, very intelligent, certainly on the fast track towards success, but still need mentoring. Still need someone to perhaps be a sounding board for some of the issues that they face, primarily from, just acclimation. Because as you know, that it's 2014, and we just had a big brouhaha over a Cheerios commercial where they had an interracial couple. I mean, come on, it's still an issue. But we don't have any barriers with regard to the mentees that can join our program. We obviously just focus on the urban core because that's been the loudest outcry.
Okay, all righty. what about adoption? Does your program deal with kids, first of all, who don't have parents, who might be in the foster care system? And do you link to any organizations that are adoption organizations? As I understand it, the adoption rates for black kids is much different from other kids.
Yes, that's true. Not in the adoption area, but we did begin an outreach, and we're at the very early stages of partnering with Big Brothers Big Sisters. They came to us last year because they have a plethora of volunteers willing to be big brothers, but not a plethora of men of color.
Okay.
So they solicited us to see what we could do, and we thought, well, perhaps we could have some of your bigs bring your littles, that's what the vernacular they use, to some of our workshops, some of our programs. We'd have something for the bigs, and we'd have something for the littles, and that would be a way to reach them.
Okay. I'm noticing on your website you have a program, a robotics club.
Yes.
100 Mighty Bites. Talk about that.
Yeah, the Mighty Bites. One of our members is steeped in the robotics culture and had a relationship with the VEX robotics organization. So the last 3 years we've competed in the VEX robotics competition at Southeast Community Center, which the next one is going to be next Saturday at Southeast Community Center. And this is an opportunity for young men to get STEM-like science, technology, engineering, mathematics type of experience within the auspices of what we do.
Okay.
So we have engineers within our organization that, they're all over that. And so this is an opportunity for us to draw that aspect of reaching young men's interests.
Okay, very good. Give us some more contact information. Tell people in the community who are interested or who might know a young man who could benefit from your mentoring program, or men who would like to become mentors. What should they do?
Well, if you go to our website, which is 100 Black Men, spelled out the number 100 blackmenkc.org, and if you click on the Contact Us site, that'll go directly to our communal email system, and we'll respond back to you with an application. We send a 2-part application, one for the youth to fill out, one for the parent to fill out, so we can build a profile to figure out the best way to incorporate them into our program. I would be remiss, my treasurer would kill me if I didn't mention that there's a contribute site on there as well.
Okay.
So even if that's the way that you'd like to help us, we certainly welcome that.
Okay. And upcoming events, can you mention?
Yes. The next thing that we're doing is Edward Jones is going to be hosting a job fair at Brio on the Plaza on Tuesday, February 18th from 5:30 to 7. We are going to have a presence there in some capacity, and this is a recruitment fair for professional folks who might be interested in talking with folks from Hallmark, from Sprint, from Edward Jones, from a lot of different corporations across the area.
Okay.
And our busiest activity is in June, where we have a network with 100, where we invite African American executives from across the city to come and do a speed networking event. So people can come out, they can ask questions with people who have reached a height that they wouldn't get to engage with on a regular hiring process. So basically, you just meet the HR person, maybe the hiring director, and that's it. So they can provide advice, what have you, within a 5-minute time frame. And then we also have a panel discussion about building wealth and entrepreneurial stuff and things of that nature. And our big thing that we do in June is the celebration of fathers. We originally partnered with Representative Emmanuel Cleaver 4 years ago at the Gym Theater, where we just simply wanted to recognize men who are doing their job. Unfortunately, that type of recognition is needed, but we felt that it was important to continue that tradition, so we do that in June as well.
All righty. Well, thank you so much, Brian Foster, president of 100 Black Men of Greater Kansas City. Real Men Giving Real Time. They're 100blackmenkc.org online. Thank you so much for being our guest.
My pleasure. And I want to make a pledge, too.
Oh, wonderful.
I will pledge personally not $150 right now to your pledge drive, and I challenge every member of the 100 Black Men to match me.
Bless your heart. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
You going to be a guest DJ on Roots Wise Reggae?
Well, I wasn't thinking of that, but yeah, we can come up with something.
Okay. Please stay tuned, everybody, at the top of the hour for Guess Who's Coming to Kansas City with MC Richardson. I was not expecting that. Thank you so much.